Stand by SOT1.
Standing.
10 seconds. Ready, rollin'. Ready, SOT1.
Ready.
In 4, 3, 2, 1. Roll in.
From legendary Uncle Studios in beautiful Southern California, welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters, the central location for you employees, you employers, and of course, we haven't forgotten about you damn independent contractors. And now, here's this week's edition of Work Comp Matters. It's 12 noon straight up on June 25th from beautiful Southern California. Welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters. My name is Steve Appel. I'm joined by the madman across the water, John Scalia, and the Chief of Staff, Dr. Mike Zyma. Work Comp Matters is brought to you by the workcompcentral.com. If you want the number one location for workers' compensation in both California and around the United States, check out the workcompcentral.com. They've got a free 7-day offer. And if you want to pick up their services, I have them. You should too. It's only $1 a day. Work Comp Matters is also brought to you by A1 Law, number one computer management system. 818-357-4120 for your no strings attached money back guarantee. Also $1 a day. A1 Law. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And of course, we hope to provide you in the next 30 minutes with some talk news and hopefully some answers for you employees, you employers, and of course, we haven't forgotten about you independent contractors. Governor Gavin Newsom, the Gav, says he may punish cities that thumb their nose at rules. The Gav says he may withhold financial relief from local governments that don't follow guidelines that he says are necessary to tamp down, and that is T-A-M-P, tamp down the spike in coronavirus cases in California. At a news conference yesterday, the Gav called out those who simply thumb their nose at state guidelines. Newsom did not specify how cities and counties would be expected to prove their compliance, though he added he was trying to encourage good behavior rather than punish bad. We give an enormous amount of power, control, and authority to local government, but what we're now looking for is accountability, Newsom said. You know, my understanding is that Tuesday there was a record spike in California, 6,000 cases apparently documented in California, 6,000 new cases. And I realize that the needle is going into the red. I realize cases are spiking. I am wearing my mask out in public, although I'm not going out in public any more than I used to. But still, my determining factor is an increase in hospitalizations as well as potential deaths. And John, we've talked on the show many times before. You're in Munich, Germany. You've said many times, and who am I to disagree, that the Germans are just compliant. Government tells them what to do, and the Germans do it. However, in California and the United States, we are the wild, wild west. We do not like being told what to do. We do not like being told to wear our masks. And of course, when we don't like it, we go out and protest. Do you think that if and when the second wave actually gets here, that governors as well as Gavin Newsom may indeed shut us down again?
I think that they'll be caught between a rock and a hard place. I think the science will tell them that they have to shut it down, but the politics is going to make it very, very difficult to shut it down. So I think they're going to have to make a hard choice if there is a second wave between public safety and the economy. I think I don't think it's a false dichotomy. I think they're going to have to pick one or the other. And I wouldn't want to be the guy that had to make that choice.
and neither would I. But also, let me add to that anybody that thinks this is a straight medical issue is living on a different planet. This is clearly a combination of a political issue as well as a medical issue, and balancing the two. I've said before that if the government decides to shut us down again, you thought you saw protests and riots before. I think it's going to be insane. Dr. Mike, what's your take if and when we get a second wave, and if the Gav decides to shut us down again?
Well, what we're seeing is not a second wave, it's still the first wave. People, especially in Texas, some in California, but Texas and Florida, just throwing caution to the wind, and mostly young people. A lot of these current infections are young people, and it's part of the first wave. And I think, Steve, that you're correct as far as there being protests if there is another general shutdown. But that's what I see coming, because the numbers are just going crazy. That's what I see coming.
Speaking of young people, in Europe, Novak Djokovic is the number one men's tennis player in the world.
What a great example. Yeah, go.
Yeah, he organized a private tournament in two stages in Serbia and Croatia, two backwater countries. In Serbia, they love to start world wars. But anyway, he organized a tennis tournament, and four of the leading top players in the world have now been tested positive with the coronavirus, including Novak Djokovic. And interestingly,
and a lot of people...
Djokovic is also an anti-vaxxer, so take that, Djokovic.
Yeah, and also a number of people that went to the tennis tournament, and a lot of the people that partied with Djokovic, it's a debacle.
And Mike, Mike,
absolutely, yeah.
I was going to say, Mike, you'll be happy to know that your hero agrees with you. Want to take a guess on who he is? He's also a doctor, but he's a medical doctor. He agrees with you.
Fauci.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, the country's preeminent epidemiologist expert and the face of the national coronavirus response, had a stern response yesterday to California's recent uptick in cases amid reopening. As the state's reopening restrictions loosen, Fauci told virtual attendees at yesterday's talk with the Sacramento Press Club that young people are contributing to the surge.
Yeah, and there was no social distancing, no physical distancing at those tennis events. Not only because they did have film clips of Djokovic and his friends partying like normal in a club. But the fans weren't distanced either. It was a normal, they seated them just like it was a normal event pre-COVID.
Speaking about independent contractors, Uber and Lyft drivers organized a caravan in San Francisco, where John grew up in the Bay Area, yesterday to protest the company's opposition to classifying drivers as employees and what drivers called inadequate safety measures during coronavirus. Protesters, around 50 cars, drove from the marina to Uber CEO, I'm going to screw this up, Dara CEO Dara, regarding the $16.5 million Pacific Heights house holding signs that included the words, quote, "A thief lives here," close quote. Well, you know what? All I can say is no one is forcing you to work for a thief. You don't want to work for a thief? Don't.
Well, that may not be an option. There's too many thieves who own companies in America, including the president. But the reality is, you guys do workers' comp. Do you think they're employees, or do you think they're actually really independent contractors? What do you think?
Clearly employees.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, don't you agree, Steve?
John, I'm going to ask you to read a news story and Mike comment on it. I'll be back.
Okay. As COVID-19 cases soar at San Quentin, experts say inmate population must be reduced. A team of UC Berkeley and UCSF health experts warned prison medical officials nearly 2 weeks ago that they'd need to cut the population of San Quentin State Prison in half to avoid a potentially, quote, catastrophic, unquote, outbreak there. But prison officials didn't heed the warning, and since then, confirmed coronavirus infections among prisoners have rocketed from 48 to 456, far outpacing any other facility in the state and overwhelming a system that waited too long to react. Health experts warn the conditions there are already dangerous and that the only way to control the situation would be to reduce the prison's population. Well, there you have it.
Either that or send them somewhere else, send them to another prison. I understand they're shuffling prisoners around in California like crazy. Have you heard that, John?
Well, I know they're shuffling them around, but the interesting question is, since as far as I know, almost every prison facility in California is way above what its intended capacity is, I can't imagine that actually is a solution.
Well, you had said before that perhaps a solution would be to let the drug offenders go. Do you still feel that way? Is that your opinion?
Well, they constitute 50% of prisoners. I mean, yeah, that would reduce the overpopulation problem instantly.
Looks like that's.
I'm sorry, Mike. Speaking of drugs, after 3 Bay Area verdicts awarded $190 million to cancer victims who sprayed Monsanto's widely used herbicide on their crops, parent company Bayer AG said yesterday it would pay more than $10 billion to settle as many as 125,000 lawsuits by ailing U.S. users of the product. The settlement will also establish a scientific panel to determine whether the Roundup weed killer and its active ingredient glyphosate, GLYPHOSATE, caused cancer.
Hey, have you guys heard about Major League Baseball?
What's the latest with Major League Baseball?
Okay, put your seatbelts on because this is crazy. I mean, does that mean if I have one I can light it and smoke it? I'm going to do that. Yeah. Well, the thing is, I had gotten upset with MLB and the union because they were messing around about numbers, messing around about what percentage of salary, yada, 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 yada. So I was very surprised when yesterday they announced an agreement. Now, it's a 60-game season that starts toward the end of July. And this is what I heard, and it was a reliable source. Players get 3/8 of their salary, like 37% of their salary. The designated hitter will be in both leagues. There will be no players in dugouts. Rather, they're going to be in the seats, seated apart from each other, which is no problem because there ain't going to be any spectators. So they have a lot of choices as to where they want to sit, okay? After the game, the players don't take showers in the clubhouse. Rather, they go back to their hotel and do that. Here's a big one. No spitting.
In extra innings, do you know the extra inning rule they're putting in place?
Yes, that's a good point, John. And the extra inning, the 10th inning will start, the top of the 10th will start with a runner on second base.
Right.
Now they've been talking about that for a long time, but
because they want to shorten the extra innings. Mike, I did not hear that there will be no fans at all in the stands. That's what they're doing.
Well, that's my understanding, and they're going to. I think all the games are going to either be played in Arizona and or Florida. But here's the groundbreaking one: no spitting.
Yeah.
It's the last time you saw a game where the players didn't spit. So there's no sunflower seeds. There's no chewing tobacco. You can still have gum, but you can't spit. And of course, you can't give players a Gatorade bath if they do a walk-off home run. At the hotels where the players will be staying, they can't go into the swimming pools, and they are to take their meals through room service in their rooms. There's a lot of other stuff.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, what's the deal with designated hitters in both leagues? Why is that relevant to COVID-19?
Well, it's relevant because it shortens the game in the National League, because pitchers are essentially vestigial organs when they bat.
Yeah,
that's a good point. I didn't think of it.
John, did you say vestigilar?
Vestigial. Yeah.
And what does that mean? I'm ignorant.
Like your
appendix. It's an unnecessary organ.
Okay.
But it used to have a function.
Yeah, it may still, but yeah, it used to be. They think it was for digesting celluloid when that was part of our diet.
And how is that pronounced again?
Vestigial.
Vestigial?
Vestigial.
Vestigial?
Yeah.
All right. Well, you're dialed into Work Comp Matters, your vestigial daily podcast.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Yeah.
We have a function.
Yeah, we are. This vestigial podcast is brought to you by the workcompcentral.com. John, get your segment ready. If you want the number one location for both California and around the United States for workers' compensation, check out the workcompcentral.com. They've got a free 7-day offer. And if you want to pick up their services, it's only $1 a day. The vestigial podcast, Work Comp Matters, is also brought to you by A1 Law, which is not a vestigial, and I know I'm pronouncing it wrong, computer management system. This computer management system is the best on the planet. It's used by more workers' compensation attorneys than any other computer management system in California workers' compensation. 818-357-4120 for your no strings attached money back guarantee. $1 a day, A1 Law. Well, speaking of workers' compensation attorneys, we have 35-year retired workers' compensation attorney, Mr. John Scalia, with his regular segment and a story potentially. John, take it away.
Okay. Well, just a tagline on what Mike said about the baseball. You realize, Mike, it wasn't an agreement that Commissioner Manfred imposed those conditions on the players. We can get back to that later. Okay.
Really? I did not know that. Okay, go.
Here's a story from the LA Times. Sheriff asks Attorney General to monitor shooting while stonewalling Inspector General. The independent monitors for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department were brought in for moments like these. The law enforcement agency is facing outrage from the community and questions about back-to-back shootings that left 2 men dead, as well as its handling of the death of Robert Fuller, 24, who was found hanging from a tree near Palmdale City Hall. But the 2 institutions tasked with overseeing investigations of deputies' use of force, the Sheriff Civilian Oversight Commission and its investigative arm, the Office of Inspector General, say they are running into roadblocks. Inspector General Max Huntsman said his office on Monday asked the Sheriff's Department for reports, documents, and video relating to the shooting death of 18-year-old Andres Guardado, who was killed by a deputy near an auto body shop in Gardena. Huntsman said he hasn't received a response. The office also requested the report that detailed events surrounding the death of Fuller's half-brother, Tyrone Boone, who was killed in a shootout with undercover detectives, to analyze the underlying reason for the manner in which the arrest was conducted, Huntsman said, but they refused to give it to us. The watchdog's functions were centerpieces of reforms, editorial comment here, that's a joke, and acted at the Sheriff's Department in the wake of a corruption and brutality scandal in the jails that led to indictments of several sheriff's deputies and high-ranking commanders, including former Sheriff Lee Baca. But the agencies have increasingly complained that the administration of Sheriff Alex Villanueva is refusing to share information and stonewalling efforts to provide true oversight. And it is set against the backdrop of a national movement stemming from the death in Minneapolis police custody of George Floyd, that is demanding greater transparency and a radical change, of course, in policing to combat police brutality and other systemic racial injustices. Okay, and the article goes on, but you get the main point. I also want to point out that coincidentally with this, I read about the district attorney. Her name is Janet Lacey, who's the district attorney of Los Angeles. She is a person of color, at least her face is black. However, she is a tough law and order person, meaning that she is a functionary of the LAPD. Why do I say that? Because 75% of her $2 million election campaign fund came from law enforcement. So guess what? There hasn't been a single law enforcement officer prosecuted since she became district attorney, including one that the chief of police said should be prosecuted because the chief of police ain't the union. And so what does this lesson tell us, folks? It tells us that you may not be able to buy justice, but you can sure as hell buy injustice. You can make sure that nothing gets done, no matter how bad the abuses are. And we see it continuing and continuing, and all these so-called oversight commissions are ridiculous. You will go back, you remember several programs back when I talked about the only way to solve this problem is to have a completely independent investigative office, which actually they do have in San Francisco, apparently. But that was my comment then, and it's my comment now. And I think events are proving me to be right, which I love. And that's my segment for today.
And John, I have to compliment you on one very short part of your segment when you said, quote, "That's a joke," close quote, and then gave this disclaimer, "That's your own opinion." So thank you very much for that. And I want to do a story on 33,000 fewer COVID-19 deaths. If nearly everyone wears masks in public, tens of thousands of lives could be saved during the coronavirus pandemic. An updated forecast from the University of Washington predicted the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluations, IHME model, which is often cited by the White House, predicted that more than 179,000 people in the U.S. will die from COVID-19 by October 1 of this year, U.S. News reported. But the model also showed the number of deaths would fail to about 146,000 if 95% of the population wore masks in public. That's according to KIRO. But you know what? In prep for today's show, we were talking about a dust cloud that's coming our way. And I really did not hear anything about it. So, Mike, why don't you go ahead? I know you don't have any text in front of you, but briefly talk about the dust cloud. And then, John, go ahead and comment on what you know as well.
So about 3 days ago, I became aware of this dust cloud while getting my usual initial morning news injection, the Today Show. Al Roker was talking about how the astronauts in the space station looked down and saw a gray extension coming from Saharan Africa and going west across the Atlantic Ocean. And it turned out that every year about this time, there is such a cloud that comes from Africa. However, this year it's much, much more pronounced. So it probably has something to do with global warming. And now I believe, John, you said that or Scott said that it's about hitting Puerto Rico now. So I think it's going to hit southern Florida and then go up into the Gulf and hit the Gulf states. It's my understanding. It's an extraordinary development.
Yeah, I think you're accurate on the geography there. What it's going to do, of course, is it's going to create problems probably for people who have pre-existing lung conditions, or they have trouble breathing, because there's going to be particulate matter, meaning sand particles in the air, which is going to make it more challenging to take your normal breath. I mean, it's going to be okay if you don't have any pre-existing health or breathing problems. But if you do have them, it's going to make it much, much worse. I think, doesn't California occasionally get something from the Mojave like that once in a while?
Well, yeah, actually, more so in Arizona, between Phoenix and Tucson. In fact, when our son was going to school there and we would be driving, we had to make sure that there's a term for it. I can't remember what it is, but we had to watch out for that because, you get right in the middle of one of those things and you can't see your nose in front of your face.
Yeah, it's a sandstorm. And it's just like, when you ski and it snows so hard, it's called a whiteout. You can't really see up from down. And the same.
Yeah, we never saw one.
You get disoriented.
Yeah, we saw something like that in the Central Valley once, but that was decades ago.
50,
yeah, the Central Valley is more subject to chili fog.
53% of office workers surveyed in late April say they are comfortable with going back to work, and of them, 73% say they would be okay with workplace temperature checks, according to the results released today by New York-based human resources technology firm HIBOB, H-I-B-O-B, Inc. And there goes my dog. So we are about at the end, Mike, or actually, John. I was going to say, John, go one more story, and then we'll close the show, or whatever.
Yeah, it's not really a story. I went to the Apple store today because I was having a problem with one of the programs on my iPad, which is what I use for this broadcast. And it was the first time, and before I walked into the Apple store, they shot my forehead and took my temperature.
And that is, of course, with a portable device that does not need to come in contact with you. They just point it at you, and it gives your temperature. By the way, John, I think we've discussed that the old normal of 98.6 apparently has gone down at least a degree. I've had my temperature taken 2 times by this type of device, and both times it registered right at around 97. What was your temperature, if you don't mind me asking?
They didn't tell me. They just shot me and let me in the store.
Well, John,
but you realize, of course, Italian temperatures are higher.
No, I did not realize that.
That's a joke.
Well, John, next time you get your temperature taken, you have to report what it is on the show.
Yeah, if it happens again, I will.
All right, Mike, any closing thoughts?
No, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you both for once again contributing to Work Comp Matters. For my chief of staff, Dr. Mike Zyma, madman across the water, John Scalia, Scott Walton of legendary Uncle Studios, and all the good people back at WorkCompcentral. My name is Steve Appel. We'll see you again tomorrow at 12 noon for another edition of Work Comp Matters.